Whoops. That's basically the message of today. The Mughal Empire, or Mughals, had a pretty good thing going on. You had Babur and Akbar, who had carved out this massive empire through sheer brute military force, but even though they used brute military force, they weren't themselves all that brutal. They promoted religious pluralism and syncretism. The Emperor Akbar himself actually created his own religion that combined Christianity, Islam, Zoroastrianism, Sikhism, and Hinduism. So, yeah, these people were interested in creating a united India. Then the successors of Akbar, well, they were interested in living the high life, but still, you had religious pluralism for the most part. Now we're going to throw that all away. Now, the successors of Akbar, Jahangir and Shah Jahan, basically kicked back, took it easy, and left their subordinates, including the royal wives, to take control of most of the decisions. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and indeed, it is sort of a moment of female empowerment, but the issue is, like the great philosopher known as my grandmother used to say, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. In other words, there are too many decision makers and they all want very, very different things. What's bizarre is that during this moment of female empowerment at the higher levels, at the bottom levels, we begin to see a regression to what India sort of looked like before Akbar came to the throne. So, for example, we see the restoration of practices like sati, the immolation of widows after the deaths of their husband. We also see the reemergence of child marriage. Ugh. So we're going to kill off Shah Jahan, and he is succeeded by his son. But this son was deemed a weakling by this other son by the name of Aurangzeb, and he basically overthrows said son, whose name is unimportant, and he becomes the emperor of the Mughal Empire. So he has two goals that are a lot. So he wants to extend Mughal control over all of India, not just most of it, and he wants to purify Indian Islam and rid it of Hinduism. If well, whatever you think of the morality of those goals, if he had stuck to maybe just one of those goals, he could have gotten by with it. But the problem is he tries to do both at the same time. Also, with point one, I have to quote the great philosopher known as my dad, who often says annoyingly, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. In other words, if you want too much, well, sometimes you risk losing everything. Perhaps not coincidentally, a large Hindu empire called the Maratha Empire declares war on the Mughals. The Marathas basically emerged from sort of I can do cardinal directions, southwestern slash central India. And they emerge and they basically really kick butt. Again, we've seen a significant decline in the military effectiveness of the Mughals since the reign of Akbar. This severely weakens the Mughals, and you can make the argument that they don't really recover after this period of time. So, by the time of his death, Aurangzeb has conquered most of India, but be careful what you wish for, because this means that the empire is even more overextended financially, and it was pretty darn overextended because of Jahangir and Shah Jahan's sort of spendthrift life, or not spendthrift, extravagant lifestyles. And also the social contract that formed the basis of the Mughal Empire, this harmony between Hindus and Muslims, unravels. For example, the religious tax is restored. You also have the fact that fewer important Hindus are in positions of power within the bureaucracy, for example. We look at the Ottoman Empire, it basically ends with a bang. On the other hand, the Safavid Empire and the Mughal Empire, they both end with a whimper, and it's a much more long-term decline because the Ottoman Empire remains a unified state until 1920, when it basically gets legally extinguished following the end of World War I. The Mughal Empire and the Safavid Empire, they go through a slow-motion dissolution, where slowly but surely the empire unravels, and it sort of degenerates into small independent states. By the way, this is definitely not a time to show weakness because entering from stage left, we've got the Europeans who are now forming and building ports and small enclaves all along the Indian coasts. Basically, they want them some textiles and spices, which should not really be that much of a surprise to anybody by this time. But the problem is that with the European traders come European armies and fleets to protect said traders. Slowly but surely, British, French, and Dutch corporate presence becomes more expansive, and until basically all the major colonial powers have a real military presence in India. And also, when European wars are declared, those wars spread to the Indian subcontinent. So basically, it's the British and the French that are going to spend most of the mid 18th century and early 19th century. For they're competing for control of India. Ultimately, it will be the British that will win, but that is a story for another time. What story concludes today is the functional end of the Mughal Empire as a great power. I'm sorry, Akbar. But at least we still have the Zamindars. Till next time.